It was a bustling afternoon at the Bistro Corner, a quaint but trendy eatery tucked away in a quieter part of town. Its warm lighting, mismatched furniture, and exposed brick walls made it the perfect spot for both intimate dinners and casual lunches. The smells of freshly baked bread, sizzling steaks, and roasted vegetables wafted through the air, drawing in customers who sought comfort and a little luxury in their meals. The restaurant's staff, led by the experienced but friendly manager, was in full swing. Orders came in fast and furious, the waiters weaving through tables like clockwork, and the kitchen staff worked in harmony to create the perfect dishes. Amidst the chaos, Emily, one of the youngest waitresses, stayed calm and composed, moving from table to table with ease. Emily loved working here. The regulars appreciated her friendly smile and efficient service, and she loved the close-knit atmosphere of the team. As the lunch rush started to subside, Emily was finishing up with a table of business professionals when her eyes caught sight of a new customer walking through the front door. He was tall, his features sharp yet approachable, and his casual attire, simple black t-shirt, well-worn jeans, and a cap, made him stand out from the usual crowd of suited-up office workers. There was something undeniably striking about him, though Emily couldn't quite put her finger on it. He walked with purpose but wasn't rushed. As he stepped into the restaurant, he glanced around, seemingly looking for the right spot to settle. Emily couldn't help but notice that there was something about his presence that commanded attention. His calm demeanor contrasted with the usual energy of the restaurant. Perhaps it was his confidence, or maybe his aura, but something felt different about this customer. "Table for one?" Emily asked, breaking the silence between them with her friendly, practiced tone. The man looked up as if snapping out of his thoughts and met her gaze. His eyes were kind, yet intense. "Yes, please," he replied, his voice low but clear, a hint of gratitude in his tone. Emily led him to a table in the corner, away from the more crowded areas. The lighting here was softer, the ambiance more intimate. She handed him the menu, briefly, catching a glimpse of his face as he looked down at the paper in front of him. There was something oddly familiar about him. Maybe he was a celebrity? A businessman? She couldn't say for sure, but the feeling gnawed at the back of her mind. She turned to leave, but then paused for a second. Something about his demeanor seemed off. He was alone, sitting quietly, almost as if he were in deep thought. There was no rush, no fidgeting, just a quiet presence that seemed to match the peaceful corner of the restaurant. It made Emily think that maybe he was trying to escape something, or perhaps he just enjoyed the simplicity of a solitary meal. Still, she had a job to do. There were other tables to attend to, and the afternoon was still busy enough to keep her on her toes. Emily quickly moved to the next set of customers but couldn't shake the feeling that she had seen this man somewhere before. She wondered if he was one of the actors from the movies her friends were always talking about. He definitely had the kind of face that could belong to a movie star, but that wasn't something she should dwell on right now. As the hours passed, Emily checked in with the other tables, delivering orders and filling drinks. Yet her thoughts kept wandering back to the quiet man in the corner. She noticed that he didn't seem to touch his phone much. Instead, he stared out the window, watching the traffic pass by as if lost in his thoughts. He only occasionally glanced at the menu again, as though deciding what to order, but Emily didn't want to interrupt unless he called for her. Eventually, when it seemed like he was ready to order, Emily approached him again. She smiled warmly as she asked, "Hi there, ready to order?" She tried not to show any sign of being curious about him. After all, it wasn't her job to question the customers. Still, she couldn't ignore the sense that there was something more to this man than met the eye. He looked up at her with a slight smile, his eyes softening. "Actually, I'm still deciding. Everything looks great here," he said with a slight chuckle. Emily smiled. "It's all good, really. If you're not sure, I'd recommend the steak. It's one of our best sellers, and it's always cooked to perfection. You can't go wrong with it." The man seemed to ponder this for a moment. "Steak it is, medium rare," he said, smiling again. "Great choice," Emily replied as she jotted it down. As she turned to leave, She felt a strange sense of satisfaction. This wasn't just another regular customer. There was something about him that made her feel like she had been part of something important, even though she wasn't quite sure what it was yet. Still, it didn't matter. She had a job to do and she couldn't get too caught up in wondering about him. As Emily walked back to the kitchen, she overheard some murmuring from the back. The buzz of the kitchen was a constant hum, but today there was something else. A low, urgent conversation that made her feel like something significant was going on. Maybe it was just the stress of the lunch rush, or maybe it was the lingering presence of that mysterious customer. Little did Emily know, that quiet man was someone far more influential than she could ever imagine. And what seemed like an ordinary day at work was about to take an unexpected turn. Emily returned to the kitchen, her mind still racing with curiosity. She had no idea who this man was, but there was something about him that made her want to know more. The way he carried himself, so calm and composed, despite the busyness of the restaurant, intrigued her. She returned with a small dish of ketchup, a simple request, yet the way he appreciated the small gesture felt different than the usual interactions she had with customers. As she placed the ketchup on his table, he gave her a warm smile, one that made her feel as though she had done something right. "Thanks," he said, his voice softer than she expected. "I appreciate it." "Of course. Let me know if you need anything else," Emily replied, trying to hide the curiosity in her eyes. She walked away, but the thought of him lingered in her mind. His simple request seemed so out of place in a restaurant where the usual patrons were too busy to ask for anything as simple as ketchup. She wasn't sure why, but she had this nagging feeling that he was more than just a regular diner. Not long after, Emily's shift was coming to an end. The lunch rush had started to die down and the restaurant was quieter. As Emily got ready to leave, she saw the man finishing up his meal. He had eaten most of his steak and his plate was almost empty, save for a few remnants of sauce. It was then that the manager, a sharp woman named Sarah, walked up to Emily. "Hey, can you go check on the last table?" Sarah asked, pointing to the man. "He's got a special request." Emily nodded and walked back over to his table, feeling a little nervous. Special request? What could it possibly be? As she approached, the man stood up. He smiled at her again, and Emily noticed there was something different about his demeanor. He was still calm, but there was a seriousness in his expression now. "Thank you for everything," he said as she approached. "Your service has been great. Really, I appreciate it." Emily smiled politely, but before she could respond, the man handed her an envelope. It was thick, and as she opened it, she realized it was full of cash. Her eyes widened in surprise. "I wanted to leave something extra," he said, still calm but with a strange intensity in his voice. "You've been kind, and I think that deserves a reward." Emily didn't know what to say. The man was just a customer. Sure, he had been polite, but this seemed excessive. She hesitated, but he insisted. "Please, take it," he said, offering her the envelope. "I own a few businesses, and I understand the value of good service. Consider it a small token of appreciation." Confused but grateful, Emily finally took the envelope. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. "You really didn't have to, but I appreciate it." The man smiled, his eyes gleaming, slightly, as if he knew something she didn't. "Trust me, you've earned it." As Emily stood there still holding the envelope, the man stood up, finished his drink, and walked toward the door. She was still processing the gesture when Sarah, the manager, walked over, her eyes scanning the scene. "What did he give you?" Sarah asked, a sharp curiosity in her voice. "It was money. He said I earned it for good service." Emily replied, still a bit taken aback. Sarah blinked, her face shifting from curiosity to something else entirely. "You have no idea who that was, do you?" Emily shook her head, still confused. "No, should I?" Sarah's eyes widened. "That man was the owner of the restaurant. You just served Keanu Reeves." The words hit Emily like a ton of bricks. The shock on her face must have been obvious as Sarah chuckled. "He's not just some regular guy," Sarah continued. He's one of the silent investors. He likes to come in, eat, and see how things run without anyone knowing who he is. He keeps a low profile. Emily felt like her legs were going to give out. Keanu Reeves, the man she had just served, the man who had quietly sat there eating his steak and asking for ketchup, was the owner. The same man she'd casually helped without realizing who he truly was. She couldn't believe it. But as Sarah explained, the revelation made sense. Keanu had been polite, down to earth, and appreciative, everything she would have expected from someone who truly cared about the people around him. His calm demeanor now made more sense. He wasn't just a customer. He was the one who owned the very restaurant she worked at. Emily couldn't help but laugh nervously. She had served Keanu Reeves, not realizing it until the very end. It wasn't just about the money, though that was generous beyond words. It was about the unexpected moment. Meeting someone so famous and so influential and having no idea at all. As Emily left for the day, she reflected on the experience. It was a reminder that sometimes the most surprising moments in life happen when you least expect them. And sometimes those moments can come from a place as simple as serving a meal in a quiet corner of a bustling restaurant. As Emily entered the back office, a sense of dread washed over her. The small room, cluttered with paperwork and a half-open filing cabinet, suddenly felt much too close. Mr. Thompson closed the door behind them, his face hardening as he turned to face her. "Do you have any idea who that man was?" he asked, his tone sharp. Emily shook her head, still trying to piece together what had just happened. No. I thought he was just a regular customer." "Why? Was I supposed to know?" Mr. Thompson's jaw tightened. He let out a frustrated sigh before speaking again. "That was Keanu Reeves, Emily, the owner of this place." Emily's eyes widened in disbelief. Keanu Reeves? The thought didn't immediately make sense. The man she'd been serving, who had looked so down to earth, so casual, was the owner of the entire restaurant. The realization hit her like a freight train. She stammered. "I didn't recognize him. He was so normal. He didn't act like someone important." Mr. Thompson's expression softened, but only slightly. "That's the point. Keanu likes to keep a low profile. He comes in all the time, usually for dinner, and he doesn't want anyone to make a fuss. You were kind to him, but you were a bit too familiar. And that's why I'm calling you in here." Emily's heart sank. "I didn't mean to overstep, I was trying to be helpful. I didn't know he was the owner." The manager nodded. "I understand that. But here's the thing. You're not supposed to treat the owner like just another customer. You should have been more aware. Now, I'm not saying you're going to be fired or anything, but you need to be careful with how you handle situations like this in the future. Do you understand?" Emily nodded, her mind reeling. She had just treated one of the most famous men in the world like any other customer, and now it seemed like she was being reprimanded for it. The thought of making Keanu feel uncomfortable because she hadn't realized who he was made her stomach turn. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson. I didn't mean any disrespect," she said quietly. "I know you didn't. But this is a business. It's important to be aware of who's who, and to maintain professionalism at all times." Emily was about to respond when the door to the office opened. Mr. Thompson turned to see Keanu standing in the doorway, his hands in his pockets, looking as calm and collected as ever. Emily froze, her mind racing. The last person she expected to walk into the office right now was the very person she had been talking about. "Mr. Reeves," Mr. Thompson said, his tone shifting from stern to respectful almost immediately. "I didn't know you were still here." Keanu smiled gently, stepping into the room. "I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say that Emily here has been nothing but kind to me." Emily felt her face flush as Keanu turned to her. His gaze was warm and sincere, completely at odds with the professional setting around them. "I appreciate the service," Keanu continued, "and I understand why you didn't recognize me. I prefer it that way. But you've treated me like a person, not just an actor or someone with money. That means a lot." Emily was speechless. She had never expected Keanu to be so understanding, especially after her earlier awkwardness. Mr. Thompson gave a brief, awkward cough. "That's very gracious of you, Mr. Reeves. But Emily needs to understand that there's a certain way we deal with customers here. She can't get too comfortable with someone just because they're not making a scene." Keanu raised an eyebrow. "I don't think she was getting too comfortable. I think she was doing her job and being genuine, and that's exactly why I'll be leaving her a tip to remember." With that, Keanu pulled out a thick envelope from his jacket pocket and placed it on the desk in front of Emily. It was filled with cash, more than she had ever earned in a week's worth of tips. "Consider it a bonus for being a good person," Keanu said with a soft grin. "And if it's any consolation, I don't think you need to worry about Mr. Thompson's scolding. I'm the boss, and I don't mind the way you treated me at all." Emily could barely breathe. Here she was, standing in front of Keanu Reeves, the very person who had quietly been observing her from a distance, and now he was giving her this unbelievable tip. "Thank you. I don't even know what to say," she stammered, her heart pounding. Keanu gave her a gentle nod. "Just keep being you, that's all that matters." He turned to Mr. Thompson, who was standing off to the side, looking somewhat flustered. "And Mr. Thompson, maybe lay off the lectures for a bit. She's doing just fine." With that, Keanu left the office, disappearing back into the restaurant. Mr. Thompson stood there for a moment, his mouth open as though he wanted to say something, but nothing came out. After a few beats, Emily finally exhaled, still trying to process the surreal turn of events. "Well," she said with a small laugh, "I guess I won't be forgetting this day anytime soon." Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. "I think you've learned a valuable lesson here, Emily. Don't underestimate your customers, even if they don't look like what you expect." Emily nodded, still in shock. "I guess I learned that the hard way." As she walked back into the restaurant, envelope in hand, she couldn't help but smile. The day had started out like any other, but it had turned into something she would never forget. Not only had she served Keanu Reeves, but she had learned an important lesson about kindness, professionalism, and, most importantly, how far simple acts of respect could go. Emily stood frozen, her mind spinning as Mr. Thompson's words echoed in her ears. The world around her seemed to blur. She could feel the heat rising in her face, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to comprehend what had just happened. Keanu Reeves? The thought seemed surreal. The man she had casually served with a smile, who had asked for ketchup with his steak and thanked her for the service, was the very co-owner of the restaurant chain, the Keanu Reeves. It was almost impossible to believe. "Fired?" she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. "You're firing me because I didn't recognize him?" Mr. Thompson crossed his arms, his face grim. "Yes, Emily. It's about more than just recognizing him. This is about professionalism. It's about treating your customers with the respect they deserve, especially the ones who own the place. You were too casual with him, and that's a violation of protocol. We can't have employees treating the owner like a regular diner. You didn't even notice who he was. Do you understand the gravity of that?" Emily's mind raced, her thoughts swirling with disbelief and confusion. She had never been in trouble at work before, and she couldn't believe this was happening. All she had done was try to be kind and helpful. She didn't treat Keanu differently because of his fame. She just treated him like any other customer. In her mind, that was the right thing to do. The world didn't need another person fawning over someone just because they were famous. But now she was being reprimanded for it. "I didn't know," she said softly, still stunned. "I didn't know who he was. He didn't tell me, and he didn't act like someone who wanted attention. He was polite, normal, like anyone else. I thought I was doing my job." Mr. Thompson's expression softened for a moment, but his tone remained firm. "That's the problem, Emily. He didn't want attention, and that's why you should have recognized who he was. He values his privacy, but as an employee here, it's your job to know the people who keep the business running. If you had known, you would have treated him differently." Emily was silent, trying to process everything. Keanu Reeves, the name echoed in her mind again. She had served him, treated him just like any other customer, and now she was facing The consequences. Her stomach twisted into knots as the reality of the situation sank in. "I don't understand," she said, her voice wavering. "I thought I was being professional. I didn't mean to offend anyone." Mr. Thompson sighed. "It's not about offense, it's about company protocol. You were too familiar, too casual. We can't have employees acting like that, especially when it's one of the owners. He expects a certain level of respect, and that's something we need to uphold in this business." Emily took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "So, what happens now?" Mr. Thompson didn't immediately answer. He turned away, pacing for a few moments, clearly deep in thought. Then he stopped and faced her once again. "I'm afraid there's no way around it. You've broken company protocol. I'll have to let you go." The words stung, more than she had expected. Emily tried to hold back her emotions, but it was hard. This was her livelihood, her job, something she worked hard for. And now, just because she hadn't recognized a celebrity, an owner no less, she was being let go. As she stood there in silence, unsure of what to do next, the office door opened unexpectedly. Emily turned around to see a familiar face. The man she had served earlier, Keanu Reeves, walking into the room. His calm presence filled the space, and his eyes met Emily's, a look of understanding in them. "Mr. Thompson," Keanu said, his voice steady. "There's no need for this." Emily blinked, still processing the shock of seeing him in the office. Why was he here? Was he going to reprimand her too? Mr. Thompson looked at him, clearly flustered. "Mr. Reeves, we need to maintain a level of professionalism with the staff. Emily didn't recognize you, and that's—" Keanu raised a hand, cutting him off. "I know the rules, but I don't think Emily deserves to be punished for this. She treated me like any other customer, and I appreciate that. She wasn't being disrespectful, she was just doing her job." Emily's breath caught in her throat. Was he defending her? "You're the owner," she said, still stunned. "And you're defending me?" Keanu smiled, his expression warm and genuine. "Yes. I don't want special treatment. I come here to enjoy the same experience as everyone else, and Emily made me feel comfortable. There was no reason to treat her like she was doing something wrong." Mr. Thompson seemed taken aback, his face losing some of its usual authority. He looked between Keanu and Emily, clearly unsure how to proceed. Finally, he nodded reluctantly. "If that's what you want, Mr. Reeves, I suppose I can let it go," he said stiffly. Keanu nodded, giving Emily a reassuring smile. "Of course, Emily. You're doing fine. You don't need to worry about this." As Keanu turned to leave, Emily felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She had been moments away from losing her job, but now, thanks to Keanu's understanding, everything was changing. Mr. Thompson seemed to take a step back, no longer pushing for Emily's dismissal. "Thank you," Emily whispered, still in disbelief. "I didn't expect this." Keanu gave her a small, knowing smile. "No need to thank me. Just keep doing your job and everything will work out." With that, Keanu left the office, and Emily was left standing there, still processing everything. She was incredibly grateful to him, but also stunned by how a simple mistake could have almost cost her so much. In the end, though, it was a moment of kindness, one that turned a potentially disastrous situation into something far more meaningful. And as for Emily, she learned something far more valuable than any protocol, that kindness and professionalism, no matter the situation, would always be the best way to handle things. As the door closed behind Mr. Thompson, Emily stood frozen in place, still processing what had just happened. The tension that had built up moments ago melted away as she slowly turned to face Keanu, who was standing calmly by the door. His soft smile was reassuring, and his presence in the room seemed to bring a strange sense of calm. Keanu noticed the shock on Emily's face and stepped forward, offering her a comforting glance. "I really meant it," he said softly. "You're not fired, you did nothing wrong." Emily, still stunned by the chain of events, could only manage a shaky breath. I didn't know," she admitted, her voice a mix of relief and disbelief. "I didn't know who you were, and I didn't treat you any differently. I just wanted to be helpful." Keanu chuckled lightly. "And that's exactly why I liked you," he said with a smile. "You weren't starstruck. You didn't treat me like a celebrity. You treated me like a normal person, and honestly, that means more to me than anything." Emily blinked in surprise, her mind still trying to process the fact that she had just been defended by one of Hollywood's most famous stars. I didn't realize the gravity of the situation," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to break any rules." "You didn't break anything," Keanu reassured her. "I understand how people get caught up in the idea of celebrity culture, but I prefer to be treated like everyone else. The fact that you didn't recognize me was actually a relief. You didn't treat me differently, and that's something I truly appreciate." The sincerity in his voice made Emily feel a deep sense of gratitude. Not only had Keanu saved her job, but he had also made her feel valued, as if her actions were seen and appreciated. It wasn't about her making the right impression on a famous face. It was about her treating him like a regular human being. And that was something he valued more than any celebrity status or reputation. As the moments passed, Emily felt a shift inside her. She had gone from fearing for her job to realizing that this unexpected turn of events had taught her something far more important. That kindness, authenticity, and treating others with respect was the best way to navigate any situation. She had feared making a mistake, but it had led her to something far more profound. Keanu's genuine appreciation for who she was, not what she could offer him. Keanu, sensing her shift in perspective, gave her a warm, understanding smile. "I want you to know, Emily, that I don't just talk the talk, I walk the walk. You've got potential, and I want to see you succeed. I'll make sure you have the support you need moving forward." Emily's heart swelled with emotion. The words she had longed to hear from her manager or anyone else had just come from someone she had least expected. This was more than just a job to her. It was a place where she could grow, be herself, and have her efforts acknowledged. She had always worked hard, but now she realized that her authenticity, her sincerity, and her kindness were just as important as her skills. "Thank you," Emily said, her voice thick with gratitude. "You have no idea what this means to me. I didn't expect any of this." Keanu smiled gently. "You don't need to thank me. Just keep doing what you're doing. The world needs more people like you. People who don't get caught up in the fame and are just kind for the sake of being kind." As Keanu walked out of the office, Emily stood there, taking in the life-changing encounter that had just unfolded before her. In that moment, she felt like everything had aligned perfectly. What had started as a stressful, embarrassing situation had turned into a turning point in her life. From that day forward, Emily's approach to her work changed. She felt empowered in a way she never had before. She was no longer focused on impressing customers or following strict protocols. She was focused on providing genuine service, being kind, and staying true to herself. And with Keanu's support, she soon realized that her career was on a new, promising path. Keanu, who had always been known for his humble and generous spirit, continued to keep an eye on the restaurant and its employees, particularly Emily. He made sure to support her career in ways he didn't have to, offering advice, guidance, and even helping her gain new opportunities within the company. What started as a simple act of kindness turned into a mentor-mentee relationship, one that would change both their lives for the better. In the end, it wasn't just about being recognized or following rules. It was about being kind, real, and willing to stand up for what's right. And for Emily, the lesson she learned that day would stay with her forever. Sometimes just being yourself is all it takes to make a difference. And so, the quiet waitress became one of the most trusted employees in the restaurant, not because of her status or how well she followed rules, but because of her authenticity, kindness, and the belief that treating others with respect, no matter who they are, was the key to success. The story of Keanu Reeves and Emily wasn't just about a famous actor defending an employee. It was a reminder to everyone that sometimes the greatest impact you can make is through simple acts of kindness and staying true to who you are. Oh,